This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellow Wall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 497 of the Yellow Wall Pod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund hiring Niko Kovac as their new head coach, the winter transfer window, and if time allows we will preview Saturday's game against VfB Stuttgart and our outlook on the Champions League matches against Sporting. For that and more joins me Matthias Zug. Hello Matthias, how are you doing?
I am dodging flu bullets left, right, and center here, but I am doing all right. How are you doing?
Doing very well myself, and also here with us, Lars Pollmann. Hello, Lars. How are you doing?
Hello, Stefan. You can call me Time because I'm not permitting so many topics.
All right, Lars. Then I guess we need to dive in quickly. So we heard a lot of names, be it Erik ten Hag or Urs Fischer. In the end, Borussia Dortmund did hire Niko Kovac as their new coach to succeed Nuri Sahin and, of course, interim's coaching legend Mike Tolberg. Your reaction to that hiring?
I'm pretty sure we talked about Kovac in a previous episode, and
I don't even remember.
My quote, I think, was, I cannot tell you how little I think of him as a head coach or something like that. So obviously I'm super excited now. I can understand the rationale behind going external. I think that was quite obviously something that was needed and something Lars Ricken actually pointed out, on his own accord yesterday when Kovac was presented, which I felt was quite interesting because obviously there's been a lot of criticism for Dortmund going internal with basically every personnel decision over the last few years, including Ricken's promotion to CEO of Sport himself. So in that sense, let's say Erik ten Hag wasn't available and wouldn't have been a slam dunk hire anyway. I don't know who else was available for Dortmund, especially given the circumstances this season. There's a Club World Cup, so the typical let's wait till the end of the season type of hire would have taken that coach basically out of the hiring cycle in the summer. So that's also my understanding why Niko Kovac wanted a contract until 26 and why I ultimately got one, even though Dortmund are now trying to sell you on the idea that was never an issue. I think, was it Kehl or Ricken who said in the press conference that was like a topic for 5 minutes, and then, I mean, that's wrong is what I'm telling you. And I as much as I can know that, I'm pretty sure that's just wrong. So I don't know. Is Kovac an exciting hire? No. Is he possibly the right kind of person, more so than coach for this situation? Yeah, maybe, because not only does he come from the outside, but he's quite experienced. He's been in difficult situations. We should remember not only the losing the dressing room at Wolfsburg and Bayern, but also that he took over Frankfurt, who were on the brink of relegation, and in large part due to a win against Dortmund, which was quite surprising at the time. He made it into the relegation playoffs, kept them up, got them into a cup final, and the year later got them to win the cup against Bayern as underdogs. So it's not like Niko Kovac has no merits as a coach whatsoever, but I don't necessarily see a path for him to be more than a stopgap, even if he gets the 18 months or whatever, 17 months at Dortmund. I don't have the imagination to see how we might be sitting here in 2028 and look back at the first 3 years of Niko Kovac and 2 more years to come or whatever. That's just not something that I see as likely with him. And obviously, whenever you make a coaching change, you should hope that you find someone you can build a long-term relationship with. And I would be surprised if he was that.
Yeah, same. Honestly, I still think that Dortmund will probably try to make a move in the summer for Hoeneß, there's enough reporting out there. But in the meantime, do I think that Niko Kovac is an upgrade over Nuri Sahin? Yes. Do I think that he is going to be a long-term fit for Borussia Dortmund? I don't think so. I'm right there with you. I mean, he did start his coaching career at RB Salzburg, just where he ended his playing career, coincidentally, then took over Croatia's under-21 and then obviously the Croatian national team. And as you just said, his other coaching hires, if you will, were at Frankfurt, Bayern, Monaco, and Wolfsburg. And I guess his peak really was at Frankfurt. I'm not entirely sure how well things went at Monaco, but I know that they were not going well at all at Wolfsburg. I think his Bayern stint most famously is his falling out with Thomas Müller. I'm a little bit torn on the Kovac hire, because on the one hand, I think he brings a few skill sets to the table that Borussia Dortmund need. He's not someone that takes any bullshit from players, which I appreciate. I think discipline and hard work are sort of his attributes that he's being dubbed for. But I honestly don't know what that will translate to on the ground. Now, what we've seen with the coaching change to Mike Tulberg, at least, is that the team does respond to a change on that position. I think they did improve in their performances compared to how it ended with Nuri Sahin. Emre Can himself said that the team sort of felt kind of dead at the end of the Sahin stint. So to breathe new life into this team is not going to be too easy. But Matthias, obviously, I also want to hear from you about Niko Kovac, because if I remember correctly, years ago you named him as a likely new Dortmund coach, or someone you could imagine on the sideline, but I don't even remember how many years ago that was, and if that's still true at all.
That was a long time ago, because I don't even remember that. That was probably around the Frankfurt Bayern time with him. Obviously, as already stated, with Eintracht Frankfurt, he did a lot of great things, and really the success that Frankfurt have had over the last years, the foundation came from him, because he kind of stabilized the club and things like that. Not too dissimilar what Lucien Favre did those years ago with Gladbach. So that definitely warrants merit. Bayern is a poison chalice, and it was for him as it was for so many. Monaco, no idea. Wolfsburg, I know it was kind of a failure, but Wolfsburg isn't the greatest place for coaches. So my opinion is Niko Kovac is the right guy for the current situation. I think he will stabilize the team defensively and probably also in build-up just to be more compact, because that tends to be his style. I expect Dortmund to play less possession and more counterattacking from what I've seen from him in the past. So to get Dortmund through the season, and thanks to Tulberg, now they're within touching distance again of Champions League spots. Is basically from the fourth place spot down to probably 13th or 14th, anything is possible this season, which is fun to a degree. On the other hand, obviously, it's nerve-wracking because you can't have too many mistakes, but at the same time, you kind of can, because everyone else is screwing up around you as well. I do agree that Niko Kovac is not the long-term solution. I mean, that whole deal to get up to 2026 is probably just a way for him to say, hey, I kind of need some kind of financial security after the summer, and that would secure that. Now, obviously, he could surprise everybody. Dortmund go on a tear and, magically win something. I don't know what, but you never know. And then they have the option of going, we're going to stick around with him. But I do think someone like Hoeneß is more likely, because I feel like Hoeneß himself and everyone can kind of see Stuttgart are probably plateaued as far as how far anyone can really take them, and he's taken them further than anyone really has in nigh to 20 years. So in that respect, yeah, I don't think he's the future of Borussia Dortmund, Niko Kovac, that is. But for the immediate future, yeah, he's serviceable, he's good. I also said someone like Roger Schmidt or someone like Erik ten Hag. To me, they're more summer coaching transfers rather than winter, because they're the kind of coaches that really do need a summer to get their style of playing across to the players. You need that time with them. Whereas Niko Kovac's system, I'm not going to say he's tactically simpler, but he's definitely less complex, which I guess is literally the same thing, just said in a nicer way.
The old simpleton.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not quite Peter Stöger. I think Kovac has a little bit more about him than Peter Stöger's tactical nuance does, but it's similar in the sense of it's simple enough to implement. You can get them to understand it. You can get some results and salvage a season that you end up at a European competition at the end of the day. And I think from that standpoint, it makes sense when you look at who is available and who is most likely to go for it.
All right. I am really intrigued how the first lineup looks, who is going to be benefiting from this coaching change and who isn't. I mean, if you followed the news conference, you will guess Niklas Süle is probably going to get a lot of minutes because he and Kovac worked together before at Bayern Munich, and I think Niklas Süle was rather integral to Kovac's system then. So we'll see about that. But in the meantime, let's talk about the transfer window because it was deadline day and it was an eventful one. Dortmund did announce 3 players. However, I think most Dortmund fans were waiting for the announcement of Rayan Cherki, who obviously did not materialize for various reasons. Also, I should mention that Salih Özcan, who's already played against Heidenheim, did also return from Wolfsburg because his loan ended. Now, Lars, before we talk about the individual signings, how do you rate this transfer window and the whole Rayan Cherki saga, I guess? I don't know how to describe it, but...
Debacle?
Debacle, also a perfect word. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm not using the word debacle lightly, but I think it's hard to find a better word for it because they were obviously very interested in the summer. Apparently, they couldn't find an internal agreement on it. You know, the reporting was that maybe Mislintat pushed for it and Nuri Sahin didn't really see a way of using Rayan Cherki or whatever. And apparently, Sebastian Kehl was more in Nuri Sahin's camp on that one. But they still kept in touch with Cherki, who apparently had sort of a wink-wink, nudge-nudge agreement with Lyon of being allowed to leave. I think we need to remind people that in France, you can't actually have a buyout legally. So there's no buyout clause, release clause, such as Dortmund have, for example, for Carney Chukwuemeka. And Dortmund quite obviously left it too late. I think that's the gist of the reporting, especially from France, that Lyon, who have also been put under some financial restrictions, would only be able to sign someone on loan without a loan fee to replace Cherki, who obviously is one of their most important players. And they weren't willing to do that late in the window to honor that gentleman's agreement, whether that existed or not. And the reading of the situation that is prevalent around Dortmund is that they probably could have gotten Cherki if they had gotten their act together more quickly, if they didn't waste a few days in getting Kovac signed up, because we all remember that he was basically the first name mentioned after Sahin was sacked. Before Sahin was sacked, it was more about Ten Hag, but he pulled out of the race or whatever quite quickly. And then I think more or less the day after Şahin was sacked after the Bologna game, Niko Kovac was pinpointed as the most likely option. And then they dilly-dallied, took a week until the Champions League game against Shakhtar when he was announced, or when he was leaked during the game, which was another annoying point, but nothing we have to go into right now. And then they started talking about possible transfers, and then Cherki was approved more or less by Kovac, but they just left it too late. So it's quite embarrassing when you're in constant communication with the player for months, and then you leave it until the deadline day and don't have a plan B, because we'll get to Svensson, Chukwuemeka, and maybe even Ramaj in a little while, but none of those guys are replacements for Daniel Malen. Now Cherki is also not a out-and-out winger like Malen was, but at least another attacking-minded option. Maybe you push Brandt out to the wing a bit more often or whatever. If you get Cherki can also play on the wing, despite being a bit too slow probably for an out-and-out winger in the Bundesliga. But to not sign him and then not have a plan B at hand that you can execute quickly, that doesn't reflect well on Dortmund. And I think it's a bit easy to say, well, Lyon didn't honor that agreement or whatever. Well, don't leave yourself vulnerable to that. I mean, you had all the time in the world. The winter transfer window ran from January 1st to this Monday, and it seems like basically they did fuck all until, like, I don't know, January 31st or whatever. So, I mean, there's very little sympathy to be had from myself in terms of deals they didn't get done.
Well, they worked really hard in their war room on deadline day, however, Lars. You should respect that. But no, honestly, what you just described is, let's call it the butterfly effect of incompetence. Matthias, what's sort of your take on the work of Sebastian Kehl, and maybe to a greater point we can maybe bring this into, but the entire transfer window, we had reports leaking left, right, and center about the let's say hardened or the fractured working relationship between Sven Mislintat and Sebastian Kehl. And obviously Lars Ricken was talking about on the news conference yesterday that he's not going to announce anything about whether this will continue or not. So what do you make out of this? Let's call it a clusterfuck, maybe?
Well, since we've now earned the explicit tag for this episode, thanks to Lars, which I wasn't expecting, I'll be honest. I was putting, if you would have put money on it, it was either going to be you or me first. So I appreciate Lars doing it. I'll be honest. I blame Nuri Şahin. No. Indirectly, because Borussia Dortmund, for whatever... Okay, there we go. We've all done it now. For whatever damn reason, decided to stick with him way longer than you ever should have, when we all looked at it and went, yeah, this isn't... I mean, are you kidding me with this right now?
You totally own us a Nuri Şahin rant.
Just, I mean, like, that he made it through the winter break is probably the biggest failure of this club this season, because had you gotten rid of him once the winter break started, which is what they should have done, it wasn't going to get any fucking better. Let's be honest, it wasn't getting better. Anyone with half a brain cell could see that. And then you would have gotten a new coach, you would have had some prep time, and you could have gotten transfers in that would have worked better, because also players aren't huge on going to a club where there's nobody in charge except for an under-19 coach. So this whole situation was mishandled simply by, I'm not going to rehash that Nuri Şahin should never have been hired, but simply by sacking him when you should have done it, and then you would have had the winter break to get the coach in with the right contract and Niko Kovac in, and dropped less points probably in January than you have, and gotten transfers through the door sooner. By delaying the Şahin decision, which I still will never understand and no one can give me a satisfactory answer, you've basically put yourself under so much pressure. You need to get a coach in. You need to get the coach in before you can get new players in, because most players don't go to a club where you're like, who's the coach? We don't know. It's definitely not the under-19 guy, but we don't know who it's going to be.
Well, may I quickly interject and ask you a quick question? What did you make of the ultimatum of one game, namely the Bologna game, that could have decided about Nuri Sahin's future one way or the other for at least that one game?
I think that kind of stuff is stupid. I mean, it's just stupid. Come on.
I know how to push our buttons.
It's like telling your significant other, okay, if you cheat for a 5th time, then I'm kicking you out of the house. No, that's not how that works. And it's the same with the coaching stuff. It's like, well, you've been shit for 6 months, but man, if you get a win in this one game, we're gonna wait another 3 days before you give you another ultimatum. No, if you're already at the point where you're like, maybe we should give him an ultimatum, maybe you should fire his ass. It's just so stupid. It's so stupid. And it just, oh my God, I'm getting an aneurysm. I don't get it. I hate that. I think it's dumb. Whenever I see it, it's make or break in this game. Like, no, if it's make or break, it's broken. It's not going to get better. And players aren't going to go, well, now I'm going to try. No, that's not how anybody's brain works. It's stupid. Congratulations, Ricken, Kehl, and co. You done fucked up big this season, and you're paying the price for it. Now, Watzke said Dortmund are financially stable enough that they can get through 2 seasons without the Champions League.
Oh, good. And we don't have to try anymore.
Fair enough. No, it's just basically getting rid of the doom and gloom thing, and I agree with him. They can probably get through a season or 2, and it's fine. It's not great, but it's fine. I also disagree with the media reports that said, Dortmund are in free fall and collapsing or are going to fall. No, it's not that extreme, but it's the media. But at the same time, these are just compounded stupid decisions. And talking about Kehl and Mislintat, one of them will be gone at the end of the season. I don't think Ricken is going to do it right now, because why do it right now? Like, the transfer window's over. Y'all fucked it up. And you may as well see what you can do and how much it's going to cost you to get rid of one, the other, or maybe even both. That I think should be a scenario that should not be ignored. That it's like, you're both kind of being unprofessional children, and we don't want any of that in the club. So I think either one of them, most likely just one of them, will not be here once. I don't even know when the last match day is. Just say by the end of May, one of them will be gone. Which one that'll be, I have no idea, because I don't know who's being the bigger bitch.
No, so you want to talk about the new signings? Or do you want to pile on and talk about the whole Mislintat versus Kehl situation, whether both should be gone or just one of them? And if so, who?
Well, I certainly agree that both aren't going to stay. One is definitely leaving. I think all signs point to Sven Mislintat, which is also the, let's say, easier victim, because in the hierarchy he's a notch below Kehl, even though they're both directors. But Kehl is clearly the more important person, being evidenced by him having a very much public profile, whereas Sven Mislintat's only public appearances, I think, have come not necessarily against Dortmund's orders, but, maybe with a chagrined nod of the head. Basically, he doesn't have a public profile, so it's easier to get rid of Mislintat. I also think, like Matthias, that I wouldn't be shocked if both were gone, because it's hard to take sides in these things. It's quite obvious that both Mislintat and Kehl have their cronies in the media, and I'm available if Lars Ricken wants me to be his crony. That's something I'm very much open to, because obviously it gives you good access and good stories and whatnot. But they've both been leaking left, right, and center, and I think the strongest move for Lars Ricken would be to say, we don't tolerate this. We don't want anyone putting themselves over the club. So you're both on your way out. I don't necessarily think they need to fill both spots again then. And as it pertains to when does that happen, I actually think relatively soon is the best choice, because obviously the transfer window now is come and gone. And you have a little bit of time to get set with new personnel or new, workflows or whatever, because you will start to plan the summer transfer window, obviously, relatively soon, but not like tomorrow. And as it pertains especially to Dortmund, they will pay a lot of money for Jan Couto, whose buy option has already triggered. They are very likely to pay for Daniel Svensson, who has a buyout option that will trigger after playing, I don't know how many games, not too many from my understanding. And then they might also want to keep hold of Carney Chukwuemeka for 35 million or so. And then that's basically the summer, unless they sell someone big like Gittens, Adeyemi, or Kobel. I think those are the three most likely options, also in terms of just getting the most money. So with that background, it kind of, in my opinion, would make sense to do this relatively quickly. I don't know if Lars Ricken has the balls basically to do something like this. I mean, he's not been on his job for a year, and it would obviously be a big step to get rid of both. Get rid of Kehl alone would also be a very big step, because obviously Kehl signed a contract extension, not even 4 weeks ago by the time of our recording. So it's a difficult situation, but I think the strongest move for Dortmund would probably be to get rid of both, because quite frankly, this childish behavior is not something that I think people who deserve a job at Borussia Dortmund would show.
I think all the leaks alone in the press should be the end of Kehl. Honestly, it's
but it's not just Kehl. I mean,
no, but I'm just saying, like, obviously both.
Yeah, but the only thing that annoys me a little bit is that there seems to be a subset of fans on social media, especially, who think that it's all Kehl, and Mislintat has all these good ideas, and then there's also obviously the subset that says it was all shine and whatever. No, it's what did you say, the clusterfuck basically?
Yes.
Earlier in this, I think that just kind of puts it well, because they are problematic personalities all over the pitch at Dortmund. So I kind of would hope that, given also that Niko Kovac is a fairly strong personality, quite dominant in terms of, his public persona and how he reportedly acts towards the team in the dressing room, that maybe Niko Kovac is the kind of guy you want in that, stormy situation, because he's strong enough to not get bothered too much. Whereas can anyone imagine Nuri Sahin or even Edin Terzic being the head coach while Lars Ricken fires two directors? That wouldn't have worked out, I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't even talked about Matthias Sammer and the club telling him in so many words, please don't be a pundit for Dortmund games anymore, after his public...
A good thing they're missing out on Champions League football next season.
Yeah, well... But yeah, let's talk about the players that Dortmund have signed. I mean, Rayan Cherki, I'm sure, would have improved Dortmund quite... I don't know if it's significantly, but I feel like he would have been a difference maker for Dortmund for years to come. Maybe they will still sign him in the summer. I have no idea. But in the meantime, I think Carney Chukwuemeka is the one you described in your article here last. Here says that he is the most exciting signing. So why is that? Why is he more exciting than a new left back or a goalkeeper that has been signed and loaned out to Copenhagen?
I mean, when a player is the, I think, third youngest to debut for a big club like Aston Villa in the Premier League at 17 and a half, and when he is signed by Chelsea for 18 odd million after 14 games in the Premier League, and when he was the best player for England's under-19s when they won the Euros, I think with Gittins in the team, for example, it's just a somewhat exciting profile and the kind of player that if the trajectory would have been on a straight path, would be absolutely out of Dortmund's range. Whereas because Chukwuemeka had a bit of unfortune, made a probably unwise career move to Chelsea, got injured at the wrong time last season, his development has stalled, and that's opened the window for Dortmund to sign a player who, again, if things had turned out just a little bit differently, might be a full England international at this point and, be considered one of the best central midfielders in England, because that's the kind of talent that everyone who knows him ascribes to him. I'll be honest, my personal level of exposure to him mostly comes from that, under 19 Euros, which was a few years ago, and he quite frankly hasn't played much professional football at this point, so that's why it's probably not wise to expect anything immediate in terms of immediate returns for him. But it is an interesting player from the profile. I mean, we all know that Felix Metscher had a bit of an impact this season for Dortmund and is going to miss a few more weeks. Now that Niko Kovac has taken over, we don't know how he plans with Metscher. He obviously coached him at Wolfsburg, but I think his turn into a defensive holding midfielder has only come at Dortmund this season. So maybe they look at Chukwuemeka as kind of their Metscher replacement for now. And then, you take a wait-and-see approach. What does he show until the Club World Cup? Do we want to make him one of our record signings or not? And if not, they signed or they paid a loan fee of, let's say, 1 million, and the wages for 4 or 5 months. That's a gamble I think is worth taking, especially given Dortmund's lack of transfer activity until that point. If that's the scrap heap, as it were, you might have found something on the scrap heap. Whereas if you had loaned a player like Salih Özcan from another club just because you want another body in midfield, that wouldn't be exciting to me. So I think there's upside with Chukwuemeka that, excites me to an extent.
Well, what I like is that he's good friends with Jamie Gittins. I think having a personal connection, I think, as the Jadon Sancho return showed with his chemistry and Marco Reus, certainly is helpful. Matthias, I don't know how much exposure you have had, and if you know what his playing profile is, because I'm frank, I know very little so far. I'm excited, obviously, to see and find out what his playing profile is, what his strengths and weaknesses are, and how he's being utilized by Dortmund. Do you have any, I don't know, insight or at least an opinion on this signing?
Sadly,
educated
I do
or not?
No, I mean, he fits a certain profile that we know from Dortmund's past, and like Lars said, if just a few things work out, also developmentally, he could be an absolute huge impact player for Dortmund at a really good price. So I would say this is a low risk, high upside type transfer that I'm glad to see the club make.
Yeah, same. What also encouraged me, we talked a lot about incompetence, but Carney said in interview with the BVB TV at least that he felt that Dortmund really tried hard to sign him. Apparently, it's been also a longer process. So, for all the things they often get wrong, I think the fact that they managed to give players the feeling that they are desired by the club and that they have a plan for these players certainly helps. And obviously, Dortmund managing to, improve the careers of young English talent does also still help in their poll with another, I think, 21-year-old. So I'm, let's say, cautiously optimistic to see how it goes, but I think Dortmund definitely needed a central midfielder to add. And welcome to the club. Hopefully it goes well. I think if they trigger his buyout clause, if he's playing well, 35 million, yes, probably one of the record signings. But that being said, nowadays on how the market has developed, I think is not going to break the bank anymore. Daniel Svensson is also, I think, a very exciting signing. 22-year-old left back from Nordsjælland. I think from what I've gleaned, he is more of an attacking-minded left back. Certainly, skill set that he describes himself more about passing and pressing resistance and going forward, crossing, scoring goals and whatnot. His loan fee, I think, is also around 1 million, and his signing fee would be somewhere between 6 and 7 million euros. Lars, since you've also interviewed an expert on the what was it, Swedish? No, Danish league.
It was a Swedish expert.
By a Swedish expert, there you go. I think you're probably also in the best position to talk about the signing, but I think before, I think the overall statement is that there is also very low risk involved, since he is not a 30 million or 25 million euro signing, and I think relatively affordable. Now, what he has revealed is that this all happened very fast, so speaks to, once again, Dortmund making moves at the very last second, because he said that I think the approach came like 3 or 4 days before Dortmund announced his signature. So yeah, there you go. New left back, definitely needed. Dortmund do need to stock up on fullbacks. Lars, can Dortmund fans be excited about this signing? Yes or no? Or should they?
I think the problem is, for one thing, the jump in quality between Nordsjælland and a Champions League side like Dortmund is not to be understated. Also, Svensson hasn't played a meaningful match of football since early December, because Denmark has a long winter break. I think their league only comes out of the winter break at the end of next week. So this is again someone who we shouldn't necessarily expect an immediate, contribution from. I will be honest, again, my exposure to Daniel Svensson, I mean, I 100% didn't know that person existed. I could have guessed because it's a fairly generic name, but you couldn't have asked me to, identify him in the police lineup or anything until Saturday. And then I did the usual thing, watching grainy YouTube footage to terrible music.
You're ahead of me there. I have not even done that.
Yeah, you should, because it was a 4-minute video and I came away thinking, okay, looks like a decent player, but I was actually annoyed at how often he as a left back would willingly go on his weaker foot to, bring in crosses and whatever. I don't know if that was a coaching instruction or if that, snapshot in the video gave a false impression or whatever. Then obviously, as you said, I asked an expert of Swedish football, Kevin Bada, thanks again. And he gave, I wouldn't say necessarily like a glowing review. He wasn't, pumping powdered sugar up something. He said it's that Svensson was basically flying under the radar, and a bit in Sweden, that only after he made his full national team debut last season that people kind of were noticing that he might have, a future in one of the bigger leagues. There were some rumors about Liverpool and Juventus last year, but I think that would have been more of a sign him and let's park him at a bit smaller club to get him exposed to a bigger league kind of thing. And now he's obviously moving, as I said, from Denmark to the Champions League. I wouldn't expect him to unseat Rami Bensebaini anytime soon, but we all know that Bensebaini is prone for suspensions. He's already been suspended in the Champions League. Also a bit injury prone from time to time, so I think it was imperative to get another body in there. And obviously Dortmund tried to get Renato Vega of Chelsea. When he went to Juventus is kind of when they pivoted towards Svensson. He was described to be sort of not necessarily a jack of all trades, but also not a master of one. He doesn't have any one outstanding trait. Apparently, more of a well-rounded player. I think what was also apparent in the short video was that he likes to move inside quite a bit, and obviously again in the game against Heidenheim, we saw Bensebaini step into that inverted fullback role quite.
I think there was a moment where we had a double pivot of Riasson and Bensebaini, which I found very funny.
And to be fair, I think Bensebaini was without question Dortmund's best player against Heidenheim. I know we're not going to necessarily talk about the game too much, but I think he was excellent in the game, and also liked how he stepped into midfield. And if that's something that Kovac also wants to do, because it's, a tactical advantage against many teams, then Svensson seems the kind of guy who has done that quite extensively in central midfield. And as always, versatility is always important, especially when you're not necessarily considered a regular starter right away. I think the transfer, as I said earlier, is pretty much guaranteed to be concluded in the summer with a permanent move. And, maybe one of those mid-level signings. I think there are obvious parallels to Riasson, even without racially profiling them, just because they're Scandinavian. Kind of came out of the blue, a fullback. Probably not someone who is going to raise the ceiling of the team too much, but someone who will offer a high floor, high intensity, good work ethic, all that good stuff. So I think it's probably one of those transfers where it's going to be hard to find something too negative in a few years, but quite possibly also not someone who, in 2026, someone's going to point out, hey, remember when Dortmund signed the best left back in the world randomly from Denmark? That's probably unlikely.
Well, nevertheless, I think it feels, at least to me, a bit like a transfer that's sort of back to the roots, a young talent that Dortmund can develop and hopefully do. So at least from that standpoint, low risk, high upside feels nice. Also, it was nice to just sort of get the news when it happened and not 5 weeks somewhere beforehand. And also there was not scouted from the couch watching conference, but actually a player none of us probably knew beforehand. So I'm curious to find out how he does at Dortmund, and I think if he is further ahead in this development than Kaba and is already a rotational piece, then that is probably going to become very helpful with the many games coming to us. And Matthias, maybe lastly, Dortmund also signed a goalkeeper. Obviously, I have written all the transfers down in my notes except his name. So I apologize. But he is obviously from Ajax and has been loaned out to Copenhagen. And Lars Ricken did say, I think Ramaj is his name, right? Ramaj, okay. That he is, let's say, a strategic move. Dortmund planning ahead to either Gregor Kobel or Alex Meyer leaving, I presume. What do you make of that signing?
Well, I don't really have a lot of opinion on it other than Eintracht Frankfurt made a lot of money on him. When they sold him to Ajax, I think for 5 million. And, they only paid 200,000 euros to Heidenheim for him. He played in Germany's youth international setup. He's from Stuttgart. And, that's about all I know about it. I mean, Kolbe also hasn't had a great season, to be perfectly honest. I don't know if Ramaj is better in distribution, because that's an area that Kolbe isn't awesome at.
I mean, Meyer is better in distribution.
Yes, way better. And so I think it's kind of a wait and see. I mean, if Dortmund get a really good offer for Kolbe, I'm less like, oh my God, how can you let him go now than I would have been a year or two ago. So I don't have an opinion other than we'll see how he does.
Yeah, Diant Ramaj is his name, obviously. Do you think this is something we should praise that Dortmund have made a strategic move, and do you think that really indicates that Kolbe might be a goner at the end of this season?
In some ways, it is my favorite transfer of the lot, because for once it seems to foreshadow some level of strategic planning that goes beyond what happens in the next 3 or 4 months. Because obviously Ramaj is not going to feature for Dortmund at all this season unless they can recall him for the Club World Cup, because there's obviously a special transfer window then for clubs to register some players that they might need for the World Cup after a long season. I think it's just smart to have all the options available to you in that position. If Kolbe stays beyond the summer and Meyer doesn't want to leave either, you can probably park Ramaj for another season, maybe not necessarily at Copenhagen. Maybe you want him in an even better league than Denmark, or maybe you want him closer to home in Germany somewhere. And if either one of them leaves, then Ramaj is either a very good number 2, or maybe he develops into a number 1. The situation at Ajax was a bit weird, because he, as Matthias said, was signed from Frankfurt, did quite well early on. I think there were quick rumors that, much bigger clubs were looking at him already, the likes of Man City and whatnot, probably not as a number 1, but still, when such clubs are mentioned, that should give you some pause. And then he was kind of phased out for Remco Pasveer, who is like 41 years old. And I think the reasoning that was mentioned, at least publicly, is not that Ramaj did badly in goal or whatever, but that Pasveer is like a coach on the field and able to help the young defenders who Ajax always have. I don't know really what the reasons were, but was quite obviously not a situation that was, conducive to keeping him. And now Dortmund for 5 million, which isn't too much money for at least a number 2, maybe a number 1 goalkeeper, have all the options on the table. If you ask me personally, I think it's pretty much nailed on that Gregor Kobel leaves after this season. I'm quite certain that there is a market for him in England. Both Chelsea and Manchester United are looking at Gregor Kobel. He's kind of made it known that he doesn't really fancy a season out of the Champions League if that's what happens for Dortmund. And I just think from a team planning perspective, it's not the smartest thing to have one of your most prized assets be a goalkeeper, because the impact that position has on your overall performance is limited in some obvious ways. And if they can, I think the quoted transfer fee in the last few weeks was like 70 million. If you can get 70 million for Gregor Kobel, then that, even though I obviously like him very much and he's not only a great player but also one of the few leaders on the team, but if you get 70 million for a goalkeeper, then almost every single goalkeeper in the world is not worth 70 million euros, in my opinion. So you sell Gregor Kobel for that. You have a war chest to improve in other positions and see if Ramaj or Alex Meyer are good enough in goal. That's basically how I would play it, because I think goalkeeper is the one position where it's great if you're exceptional, but being just about good is probably good enough, because as I said, the impact that position has on your overall team is probably lower than most outfield positions.
Well, on the one hand, I think Gregor Kobel did contribute massively to Dortmund's trip to the Champions League final with some world-class saves, and I think was it Kilo Ring yesterday said that they consider him one of Europe's best goalkeepers. I don't disagree. However, Matthias, you just said earlier that it's not his best season, and I think, I mean, the goal against Shakhtar really underlined that. I do wonder if Nuri Sahin would have, in a vacuum, in a depoliticized vacuum, if it would have helped him and his playing style to actually play Alexander Meyer, because they were building so much through their goalkeeper, and having someone being a better passer probably would have helped him. That being said, I think for 70 million, you need to sell Kobel as much as it pains me, and I would promote Alexander Meyer as the number one for the time being, because I think A, he has earned it, and B, he is very good at his feet, and I think with his feet, sorry, I think this is also a very valuable skill set right now, as we see with Kobel's struggles and how much that unsettles the defense. But that being said, Matthias, I wanted to ask you this last week, but you weren't there, obviously. Neither was I, to be fair. But do you think that the way that Kobel is struggling this season is a bit of a parallel to how Roman Bürki in the past has struggled at Dortmund, that just the overall lack of confidence in the defensive line is now also impacting the goalkeeper and his decision making?
Yes. No, I mean, I've said this before, that the trickle-down effects of insecurity in the back line can make good players look bad and try to overcompensate and then put themselves in bad situations. We've seen that with Mats Hummels in the past. I remember we had a whole season of that of Manuel Akanji. Roman Bürki obviously had that issue, and you know, Schlotterbeck definitely has that issue. If he feels like he has to go for it, man, does he go for it. And so I think if you can give more confidence in your back line, that they will perform well for you and know what they're doing, you're going to have overall better performance from your goalkeeper. And I think that Kobel is symptomatic for the greater issues that we've seen this season under Nuri Sahin, because you didn't really see that under Terzic from him to the degree that we've seen here so far this season. So, you know, I think it's all symptomatic. There's no way a goalkeeper or a defender cannot be affected by that, by the performance of those around him and the confidence there. And especially if they're really good. That's the irony of it. I feel like players that are really, really good, especially in defense, they will always try to overcompensate if there's a lack of confidence in those around them. And then they look pretty bad because they'll make more mistakes.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, Lars, I know you weren't on board, but I'm still going to ask you anyway. On a scale of 1 to 10, how massive is the game against Stuttgart now? And do you think that Dortmund have a good chance of winning this game, or what do you think will happen on Saturday? Because I'm really intrigued by how this game will go. Obviously, I have no idea myself.
On the importance scale, maybe only a 7. And obviously, it's a very important game. But as you guys alluded to earlier, this feels like the kind of season where everyone's still going to trip up afterwards. So it's not like if Dortmund lose against Stuttgart, they can wave goodbye to Stuttgart for the end of until the end of the season. It doesn't seem like they have that kind of level in them this year. But obviously, looking at the table, if Dortmund beat Stuttgart like comprehensively, they will jump them in the table, which feels a bit weird considering Dortmund are still 11th, but such is the closeness in the table. We also need to remember that Stuttgart played in the Cup on Tuesday against Augsburg. I didn't watch the game, but, was a ho-hum 1-0 victory from what I read. I think Enzo Mio, one of the more influential Stuttgart midfielders, who also seems to always play well against Dortmund, seemingly picked up a relatively major injury. So I think those things should be an advantage to Dortmund. Obviously, there's a new manager. It's a home game. You would think that intensity levels and, will and want to will not be an issue in this game, because when a new manager comes in, especially someone who preaches hard work and desire and all those buzzwords like Niko Kovac, you would expect players to want to present themselves in a good light. So in my usual role as the optimist on this panel, I'll say I have a pretty decent feeling about Dortmund's chances in this game.
Well, I just went on Kicker and saw that Enzo Mayo is still questionable against Dortmund, so his injury wasn't all that severe. It seems to be a muscular injury, a Zerrung, as we say in German. So it's still open whether he plays or not against Dortmund. But obviously, if he were to not play, that would obviously change a lot of things. Now, Dortmund will obviously be without Nico Schlotterbeck because he has been suspended for 2 games after his red card against Werder Bremen. So there's that. Matthias, quickly, Dortmund after Stuttgart will play in the Champions League. I don't know what it's exactly called, playoff round for the round of 16 against Sporting. Do you think over those 2 legs that Dortmund will make it past the I think Portuguese? Are they table toppers? I think they are. Or do you think that this is where the Champions League journey ends for the last year's finalist?
Well, I think Dortmund have a pretty good chance. I think it's at worst, I'd say 50-50 for Dortmund to advance. But I'm erring on the side of optimism with a new coach who actually knows what he's doing. And so, yeah, I think Dortmund, it's not going to be, blow away, because Portuguese teams are always tricky. We've seen that in the past. But I think Dortmund have enough about them. And if they get, if this weekend they play really well against Stuttgart and get a victory at home, I think that'll bolster the confidence. The confidence that they've been regaining since Şahin has left the building. And so I think that momentum can be utilized by a more veteran coach like Niko Kovac properly and push Dortmund past Sporting.
All right, I'll take it. I'm very anxious about it, but I'm also cautiously optimistic, as they say. Lastly, I just want to say real quick that I know we weren't going to talk about it, but still, I feel like I want to. The little Mike Tulberg stint just gave me a little fuzzy feeling. It was just nice to see someone care, and obviously the Adeyemi substitution against Heidenheim I thought was so warranted, and I really applaud Tulberg and his team for just doing it, because I was watching the game and I was watching Adeyemi in the second half quite intently, where even if he was way off the ball, I was just sort of observing his body language, because I just felt like he was not really pulling in the direction of the rest of the team. If you praise Spencer Baini for really leaving it all there, Adeyemi was on the other end of the spectrum, just so taking him off the field and just sending that message. I thought was good to see. Some accountability, always nice. And of course, the explosion after full time and him running to the fans and just, really celebrating, because that was obviously the end of his stint, but a successful one. And it was only the second away win in the league. Was nice to see, ignited a little fire. And so for that, I'm thankful. So as far as interim coaches have come and gone for Dortmund, I think this was more of the successful ones, even though Dortmund did choke away a 2-0 lead against Bremen, even though they were undermanned for a long time. So that was not ideal, but still I think overall 7 points from these 3 games is good. And so I'm just happy for Mike Tulberg and how that went, and certainly a positive sign. So yeah, these are sort of my final thoughts until we get out of here, until next time. So Matthias, Lars, thank you very much for coming on and discussing a wide range of topics this time. But it'll never be boring. So everyone out there, thank you for listening. Until next time, goodbye.